Hey everyone, it's that math magician. On this video, we're going to take another look at absolute value, but this time we're going to see, can we solve an equation that involves absolute value? And the answer to that question is yes, we can definitely solve for that unknown variable. All we will have to do is one little extra step as we're working through the problem. Now I have an example problem here for you, and that is the absolute value of 4x plus 20 equals 8. And I want to know, what does x equal? Now remember that absolute value bars have a very special property. And that special property is that anything inside of the absolute value bars will end up turning positive. For example, I could have the absolute value of -5. That would end up equaling +5. Remember, absolute value is just talking about the distance from 0 to that number. And the distance from 0 to -5 is 5. Just like the absolute value of +5 would still equal 5, because 0 to 5 is also a distance of 5. Now this idea of having a positive and a negative input giving us the same output is very important when we're solving equations that use absolute value. Because look down here. I got an answer of equaling 5 with a negative and a positive number. That thinking is exactly what we're going to use to solve this equation. Now, we want to get rid of these absolute value bars. So one thing we can do is we can just get rid of them. We can now rewrite this equation as just 4x plus 20 and it equals 8. We can write that because we're just removing those absolute value bars. But as I mentioned earlier, we have to take into consideration that we might have a negative input as an answer for this solution here. And so what we have to do is we actually have to break that equation up into two separate equations. Notice that I turned it into one equation. I removed the absolute value bars and I made it equal to +8. If I do that, I also have to create a second equation, but this time it won't be equal to +8, it will be equal to -8. And that is the one extra step that's required when we're solving an equation using absolute value. We can get rid of the absolute value bars, but when we do that, it creates two equations. One that's equal to a positive number, the other that's equal to a negative number. But at this point, these are two equations that are two-step equations that we can definitely solve and determine what x is. I'll solve the one on the left first. All I'll have to do is subtract 20 on both sides. Doing that zeroes out the ones on the left. I'm left with 4x equals 8 minus 20. 8 minus 20 will give me -12. To get x by itself, divide both sides by the coefficient of 4 so that they cancel out on the left side. X is going to equal -12 divided by 4, which is -3. That is one solution for this equation. There is a second, and we got to solve it by figuring out this last equation. Notice though that it's actually going to follow the same exact steps for solving. I'm still subtracting both sides by 20. I'm still going to end up with 4x on the left side, but this time -8 minus 20 will end up being -28. But at this point, I still want x by itself. So I will still divide both sides by that coefficient of 4. And I end up with x equaling -28 divided by 4, which ends up equaling -7. And that is it. That is how you solve an equation that involves absolute value. You can solve it and you can remove the absolute value bars, but first, you gotta separate it into two different equations. One that is equal to a positive number, the other equal to a negative number. It's that math magician, and I'll see you on the next video.